Asante. Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
I just wanted to say nimekaribishwa Mayata. Mimi aspirant lakini tutasema tu vile utasema. My name is Vivian.
Asante sana. Huyo Vivian ni wa Lang'ata. Ameniambia mimi yeye ni candidate Lang'ata. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Warembo mpo? Asanteni sana. As I said earlier today, this is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice. I have enjoyed myself thoroughly, sitting down there, listening very carefully to some of the most incisive speeches I've heard coming from the women. Those who have spoken here have spoken on behalf of the Kenyan women. And the message is there loud and clear. I had a statement that I wanted to present here, and it will be taken as read and shared with the media. But I decided that I will speak with you for a few minutes just about what I think should happen to women of Kenya going forward. I see very many young people around here. And I always say that the youth is a transient status. The difference between the youth and the old is very simple. It's only one. That the old have at one time been youth, but the youth have never been old. So the old know what it means to be a youth. The youth don't know what it means to be old. But otherwise, we have a duty to the youth of our country and to the women of Kenya. I was around during the struggle for independence of this country. And I know the role that the women of this country played in the struggle to liberate this country from British colonialism. Recently, I went to visit Mama Mukami Kimathi, the wife of Dedan Kimathi. And I found her ailing, saying the kind of beatings they received when they were at committee prison are telling now on her in old age. But one of her partners in committee prison was Mama Ngina Kenyatta. Her husband was detained and she was also imprisoned at committee prison. And there are very many women who played a very heroic role for the liberation of our country. Post-independence, many women have played a very strong role in this country. Some of you may remember Wangari Maathai, standing as a lone voice, warning us about climate change and protection of our environment. She being pushed around, arrested by the police as she was trying to protect Uhuru Park. And several other women with whom who are with us in the trenches. Charity is one of them. Martha Karua is another one. Martha Koome, the now Chief Justice, is another one. And Betty Tet, who spoke to you here, is another one. The women who were in the forefront in those days. Some of you may remember the mothers of political prisoners. Their sons were in detention. And these women decided to protest and come and sit as Freedom Corner in Uhuru Park. And one day when the police moved there to go and beat them up and disperse them, they basically removed all their dresses and they were naked in front of the policemen. The policemen ran away. But now, therefore, the Kenyan women deserve their rightful place in our society. Some people have already mentioned my meeting with Uhuru Kenyatta. Because this country was on the verge of disintegration. And when we met, it was a very difficult conversation. But we took a journey down the memory lane and ultimately said that Kenya is bigger than both of us. And we agreed to shake hands. At this point, I'm bringing to you greetings from Uhuru Kenyatta. I spoke to him earlier on. I told him I'm meeting with the women of Kenya, and he said I should convey his greetings. So he said, our country deserves better. Our country deserves better. The founders of our nation had a dream, which you call the Kenyan dream. That Kenyan dream is found in our national anthem. The first stanza says, and we sang it when we started this meeting this morning, that Lord bless this land of ours. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders. That is a Kenyan dream. A land which is God-fearing, where justice is a shield and defender, a democratic land. We'll dwell in unity, peace and liberty. That is people who are united. No discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, race, gender, religion. That is in our national anthem. And then if you're united and you work hard, then plenty will be found within your borders. That is, they wanted a prosperous nation where people live in harmony and a country that is developed. We therefore have to work towards achievement of the Kenyan dream. The Kenyan dream. And this Kenyan dream can only be achieved if we empower our people. We give them an opportunity to be able to realize their God-given capacities. That's why I have said that every child must get equal opportunity in our country. And our women must be treated as equal citizens in our country. Therefore, our women must get equal opportunities. My wife, Ida, here, has been talking a lot about the girl child education. She has been a promoter of the girl child education. That the girl child must be given opportunity and given whatever the facilities that she needs to be able to realize her potential. And that's why she's been fighting against early marriages. We, on her advice, promoted pre-sanitary towels in schools. It was passed in the cabinet meeting that the minister then for education, Mr. Mutula Kilonzo, must ensure that sanitary towels are distributed in all our schools where there are girls. It has not been followed properly, but it's something that is a complete necessity in our schools. Then this issue of gender-based violence. which is becoming, is now on the increase in our country. She's talking about the old women who were killed in Kisi. But every day you see goring stories in our newspapers, headlines. How a girl was cut into pieces by the husband or a boyfriend. Somebody hammered in school and so on. These are things that we must find a way of bringing to an end. Then, male chauvinism. You find a girl has been molested, she has been raped or beaten up. She goes to report the crime to the police station. These police officers are just laughing at her. They just ridicule her. They don't see that as a serious crime. So he said, we need to digitize crime reporting. Like they do it in Dubai. You can do it here by having a complete national network of ICT so that she can be able to report a crime digitally without having to go to a police station and be mistreated. But those police officers who treat women like second-class citizens do not deserve to be in a police force. We need to reform our police force to make it more responsive to the needs of this country. What we still have here is the relics of colonial police. The colonial police was not meant to protect the people. It was meant to rule the people. It was anti-people. People feared to go to police stations. But then I will always give an example. Because what was happening here was not happening in the metropolitan England or Europe. In England, police are civil. They are servants of the people. If you are in London and you lose the direction, you go to the police. In America, they call the sheriff. In the UK, they call the Bobby. And you ask him, excuse me, sir, could you please show me the road to Trafalgar Square? To Trafalgar Square, yes. Oh yeah, walk straight on. Turn left. 100 yards. Turn right. Then straight on. You can't miss it. You'll find it. And you say, thank you. Then you say, thank you, sir. Anapiga saluti. Hapa Nairobi, you lose your direction, you go to police, and ask afande, wapi njia ya kwenda Kariakoo? Umepotea? Ndiye afande. Wapi kitambulisho? Afande niliwacha nyumbani. Oh, huna kitambulisho? Bingo. You are handcuffed. You find yourself in the cold cell. Tomorrow you are arraigned in court. That is loitering with the intention to commit a felony. So we must change and reform our police force to make it a truly people's police. This is something that is very important. And then the issue of ownership of property. We must also discard the old practices. That once you are married, you own everything together. And if there is supposed to be any separation, which you say, God forbid, then the woman must be entitled to part of the property. And women must also be allowed to own land, just like men. Then you have also this problem of single mothers. There are very many single mothers in our country today. Very many single mothers who really suffer because they are the sole bread earner for the family. They're looking after these children alone. But they're mistreated in the society. They are not accepted as equal fellow citizens. We must change this attitude and find a way of helping single mothers in our country. Because they are bringing up children. They are bringing up other Kenyan citizens. So they need to get some support from the government, single mothers. Finally, I was telling you about the Kenyan dream. We sat together when we were having a grand coalition government. And we came up with a blueprint which was aimed at transforming this country into a middle-income economy by the year 2030. We call it Vision 2030. Vision 2030 had looked at where we are and where we want to go. And we said we can do it. We had what was we called National Economic and Social Council, which is our think tank, which had looked at where we are, the countries which were actually equal to Kenya at independence. In 1963, Kenya's economy was equal to that one of South Korea in terms of per capita income, in terms of levels of industrialization, in terms of agricultural production, and so on. All major economic indicators, Kenya and South Korea were equal. 50 years later, today, the economy of South Korea is 50 times bigger than that of Kenya. The same thing with per capita income. In Korea, they manufacture Samsung, Hyundai, LG, are all manufactured in South Korea. You here in Kenya, you don't even make a needle here. So what is it that the Koreans got right and we got wrong? We can, if we answer that question, we can change our country. We agreed that we will deal with food security, agriculture. We will make agriculture a rewarding business for our people. Smart agriculture. And the government will get involved to empower. Second, we talk about industrialization. So we talked about industrialization here. Industrialization is a must because industries will provide meaningful jobs for our youth. I started in an industrial area. That's where I went and started a manufacturing factory when I was still teaching at the University of Nairobi. I managed to get loan thereafter from the Kenya government, ICDC, through Kenya Industrial Estate. And so I know the whole industrial area in Nairobi. I will tell you, this company used to do this and that. This and that. Now it is a distressing sight if you go to industrial area today. Companies which used to employ 500 people, 1,000 people, are closed. They are now warehouses, storing containers coming from China. So you have exported our labor to China. We are bringing things from China. We're also bringing mitumba from outside the country. We have killed our textile industry through this. Other companies have relocated to Egypt or to South Africa. Why? The cost of energy is too high in Kenya. 14 cents per unit in Kenya, when it is only 4 cents in Egypt. So it's cheaper to manufacture in Egypt and export back to Kenya. Then there is bureaucracy, the bureaucratic red tape in the country. Corruption also in the revenue collection. Corruption generally is too high in this country. And that is what is scaring away investors from coming to invest in the country and the past infrastructure. So we must address this animal called corruption, bureaucracy, and so on head on. We must do that. If we don't, we will not be able to deal with these issues that we are talking about and get the transition that we want to get. We had a lot of problems when we had bombers of Kenya about devolution. Many people did not want to hear the word devolution. That's why the bombers draft was eventually discarded. Eventually, we managed to get it back after the crisis, but it is still not working the way it should be working. We want to make devolution work properly. Devolution is the answer to our problems down in rural areas. In BBI, we proposed to take more resources down to the devolved units. Of course, you're supposed. 35% is not a very difficult thing to do. There are a lot of functions which are being held at the national level here, which should be devolved together with the funding down there. And if the devolved units get proper funding, life will change in our rural areas, and our economy will grow much faster. So we will deal with devolution and ensure that devolution works properly. I want to talk about, just briefly as I conclude, the social protection fund that I'm talking about. Because I've said already, we want to create more employment for our people. We'll create employment for our women in agriculture, in industries, in trade. Our women will be able to access capital and be able to do proper businesses and meaningful businesses, not just issues of carrying wheelbarrows. As we do this, we know also that there are certain parts of our country which are remote. Pastoralists suffer seriously when there is drought. Animals begin to die, and therefore they have nothing in terms of source of livelihood. Then also farmers, when the rains disappear, the crops dry, and then therefore they have nothing. So those also require, that's what we call the rural poor. In the urban areas, you've got urban poor. Those who are unemployed, those whose businesses have collapsed, those whose company they were working for have collapsed. Therefore, they become completely unemployed. No income to even pay rent in the houses, let alone buying food for the children. So these are the urban poor and the rural poor. So you said, we are going to introduce a social protection fund in our country. This happens in other countries, in the United States, in Europe, in Brazil, even here in Africa, in Egypt and in Namibia. So we will introduce a social protection fund in this country. And this is not something that I've just picked from the air. We have sat down with experts. We have gone through these figures. The figures I'm talking about are not just handpicked from somewhere. It's as a result of serious study and consultations. That's what I have said. We will introduce a social protection fund so that each and every family where there is not a single person with any income will receive 6,000 shillings per month from the government. Finally, let me just conclude with my family. You saw my two daughters, Rosemary and Winnie. I will call them both my mothers. Rosie was born when my mother was alive. And when she was born, Aida wanted to name her mother. And I also wanted to name her my mother. Aida's mother is called Rose. We decided to do a compromise. Her mother is called Rose, her mother is called Mary. So we compromised. And that's how she became Rosemary. Okay? So Aida called her mama, and I also called her mama. Winnie was born after my mother died. So now, therefore, she also became now my mother. She was named after Winnie Mandela. At the time, Winnie Mandela was fighting so hard for the release of her husband from prison. But we had also a German friend. The wife was called Imgard. So she's Winnie Imgard. Okay? And then many other names she's given herself. Even Rosemary is called a K. But we call her Kazi. Kazi because she liked to work. She was working very, very hard. So she's called Winnie Kazi. That's the other name. Then there's Raila Jr., who's named after my not after me. That's named after my cousin, who died in a road accident. So it is just a coincidence that he was also called Raila, and I'm also called Raila. It's a different Raila. And then we had Fidel, who was our eldest son, who passed on, who we called Obangi, but me. So, but Fidel was the one who was with the mother. Now I want to talk about Aida. Because you don't know that you will not be able to stand if you don't have somebody who is strong around you. Because sometimes they say, when you are there in the pulpit, you're holding the Bible, and for better and for worse, in poverty and in wealth, and so on. But it's very easy to say up there. But when the test actually comes, very few people pass that test. But Aida is a very strong person, strong personality. And she's gone through hell herself. Me, they can say I was a troublemaker. But she has seen a lot of flack. There's a time when I was sick in prison, and they had given me some wrong medicines, so I was feeling very bad. I was feeling a lot of pain in my head, and I was being detained in Manyani, there in Sisabo there. And when the train was passing, they would hear the train making a lot of noise. You just hear the pain in the middle of my head. I could hardly sleep. So I kept on telling these guys that I was sick. They were saying that I was pretending. So I decided to go on hunger strike. And when I went on hunger strike, then they came, the security officers, to read the Riot Act to me. That if I don't want to eat, they're going to force feed me through my nose. And I told them, you can go to hell. I have already been reduced to an animal-like life here. So I'm not going to take this lying down. Because I will not accept this kind of thing, and will not accept that you can come to intimidate me in these conditions. So at night I would shout very loud, because I was in solitary confinement, alone in that block. But I would shout very loud so that other prisoners could hear me. Then they now came, and then they came back, they found the medicine had been given, the whole of my hand here was swelling. A lot of swelling in my hand and everywhere. So they moved me from Manyani and brought me back to Kamiti. But in Kamiti, I managed to use toilet paper, wrote a letter to Aida, and I gave it to a friendly Askari who agreed to smuggle it and bring it to Aida. So Aida went and talked to a doctor. And then the doctor prescribed some medicine. She went and bought and gave it to that Askari, who smuggled the medicine back to me in the cells. So, but because my head had been boiling, this letter, Aida wrote me a letter giving me prescriptions on how I should use the medicine. I could not read this note completely because each time I try to read like this, I feel a lot of pain in my head. So I put this note under the blanket and forgot about it. So one day when they came to do a search, then because you have just two blankets, one you spread on the floor and one you cover yourself with. They found that note. And then now they started asking me where I got it from. Because all the letters which are written to you are stamped officially. They pass through the prison system. This one did not pass through the prison system. So they were now alarmed. They started now investigating. That's when they now went for Aida. And they took the note to a writing expert. We found out that this was Aida's writing. So that they went and picked her up and locked her up and began to torture her to find out how she managed to smuggle this letter to me in the hospital. So that is the time, which of course, that is her story. But I was saying, she had a lot of hell at that time. Then, I was later on released from prison. I came out and I stayed out for 6 months. I was arrested again and taken back to, this time they had constructed Nyayo House. I was taken to the dungeons of Nyayo House, where they put you there in the room, they fill it with water. So just sit there in the water, you jump up and down the whole night. You know how long the night is. So after keeping me there for more than a week, Aida took a lawyer and went to court to demand that I be produced in court, habeas corpus. This is after 2 weeks. So immediately the matter went to court. They quickly served me with the detention order and was transferred to Kamiti, then to Naivasha. But then the following day, Aida got a letter from Minister of Education. She had been fired. She was sacked. And she was staying in a school compound, Kenya High School, given a few hours to clear from the school. Now our house had been rented by another tenant. She was nowhere to go. It was raining. With the children, with the furniture, nowhere to go the whole night. Just raining on them. Eventually, I don't know even how she managed. But then later on again, they would come to arrest her because they were thinking that was a communication between us and her. Okay? Then I was released again thereafter and arrested again a third time This is the last time I was arrested when me and Matiba and Rubia had planned Masabasaba. And we went in for a third time. I was released. And then now when we were organizing now another meeting, I was told they were going to come to try to finish me. And I escaped town. I went into exile. She's the one who arranged for my getting out of town. And then eventually, I told you about the mothers of the prisoners. When those mothers were camping there at the Freedom Corner, eventually they went to sleep. They were sleeping now at the All Saints Cathedral. That's where they could be seen. So one day Aida went to visit them, where they were being held, where they were sleeping in All Saints. And when she went there, they talked with the women, and then she left. The following day, the headline story in The Nation, the plot thickens. Odinga with the mothers of the prisoners. By midday, she got another letter of being sacked. But that other time when she was sacked from Kenya High, later on, because of the protest, she had been brought back and she was working at the ministry quarters. This time she got another sack, the last and final sack of Odinga. Okay? So I just want to tell you that Aida is a very strong pillar in support of me. Without her, I would not have been able to make it. Thank you, darling.